Hi, I'm Sam Kaufman with The Human Path at thehumanpath.com, a survival school here in Central Texas. I'm doing this video primarily for the folks that are taking part in the Fuego y Agua hunter-gatherer survival run. I wanted to give you guys a video. A lot of you guys came to our training camp, our weekend survival run training camp, and picked up a lot of stuff. One thing we didn't cover, and I'd like to cover for everybody who didn't make it out there anyway, is how you carry your stuff around with you. So I'm going to do a few different videos, and this is, I think, the most important one to start off with. So how can you actually carry your stuff with you during the race? You're going to have, at different times, you're going to have a survival bow, you're going to have a throwing stick, you're going to have your, through the entire race, you're going to have your water container, whatever that may be. You're going to have your knife, you're going to have probably a headlamp, and you'll have some sort of water purification device. So a minimum of those four things. Oh, and some 550 cord as well. So how can you do that? And so I've got a couple of different things I want to show you here. One is with a bandana, how you can use it with a bandana, and the other is just using it with a t-shirt, making a t-shirt backpack. So we'll do both of those, figure out which one works best for you. What you're going to have to do is try this stuff out. You may decide that you really want to have your knife by your side, and you want to make a little 550 belt and something for a leg wrap to be able to keep it from bouncing around while you're running, so that you've got your knife that you can use at any given time. Or you may decide that at any given station where you're going to actually have to use your knife, you're going to have to open up and pull out everything anyway. So it's time to take a water break. It's time to kind of sit down, get your mind in the game in terms of what the survival skill is you're going to be doing. You're going to be making bow drill fires, you're going to be making cordage, you're going to be doing stuff with a prickly pear cactus pad. Lots of different things that are going to involve a little bit of getting out of the race necessarily, and getting into the mindset of getting that task done, that skill done. Alright, let's just talk through what we've got sitting here. I've got a few different options here. First option, over here on the far left, I've got everything sitting out here on this table, and I apologize if it's a little bit cluttered. I've got a whole bunch of plants I'm getting ready to plant, so I just made a little room for this. It's kind of an informal video here. On the far left here, what we've got is a triangular bandage, otherwise known as cravat. It's sort of something that we generally call a bandana. In the military, use it. You can use it for a number of things, of course, medical and otherwise. Next to that, we have a bandana, more in the sense of what we think of as a real bandana, civilian world at least. It's a 22-inch square, and you can buy these things larger than that. You can get them 27-inch square. I would actually recommend, for this race, for you racers out there, that you get the larger one if you're going to use this type of bandana, because what that'll do is that'll give you a lot more ability to be able to put more stuff in there, and also have more room to tie with, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then on the far side, on the right here, we have just a regular old t-shirt. So I'm going to show you how to do these. Now I'm going to skip the triangular bandage. I'm going to recommend, honestly, that with the amount you have to carry, that you don't bother with that. And the reason is, you're going to end up with a triangular bandage, you end up having to do kind of a roll, and it works pretty well as a sling if you're walking, but when you're running and climbing and jumping and stuff, it's really hard to keep a roll working. And so instead, what we're going to do is what's called a bindle. A hobo bindle is kind of the type of thing that we can do with the square bandana that works best, and we can turn that into a backpack. Or over here with the t-shirt, we can make a t-shirt backpack. And so I'm going to step you through all of those those two different types of containers that you can make as a field expedient backpack. So the stuff we're actually working with that we have to pack in here, that you will have at a minimum, would be a water bottle. And here I just have a Nalgene 1-liter bottle, just to kind of show you the space and that's taking up. Now I have done this with these particular elements in both of these types of packs that I'm going to show you. And I've done them. I've jump roped. I've done some running around about 5 miles with each of them, just to kind of test out, because honestly I'd never done this with these particular components, this amount of components and these type of components inside a little pack like this. So I wanted to see specifically with what you're going to be working with, how it would work, and they both worked really well. But I would still recommend that you try them both out and make sure that you use what's going to work best for you. So over on the far left here, we have a knife. Next to that, I have it's upside down. Let me turn that right side up. That is a steri pin. Let me just go ahead and pull that out. So the steri pin, if you're going to use that for your water purification, then the way that works is there's this little wand on the end of it. And notice in that, somebody I think asked about this. Can you use a narrow mouth Nalgene bottle? And the answer is no. Not the real narrow mouth. The narrowest that you're going to be able to use is what I've got up here. And remember, you have to actually get that wand, the tip of that wand, down into your Nalgene bottle if that's what you're going to use. So the way this whole Nalgene thing works, or the steri pin thing works, is that you have to turn this on, and then you stick this down in there and you wave it around, in there, and what happens is the UV light basically destroys the DNA of the bacteria and or giardia or anything you have in there, and that's how it purifies through ultraviolet. Now, I think that for the purposes of your race, in my opinion, SteriPen is probably going to be the easiest, cheapest, fastest way to deal with this. Well, I don't know if it's the cheapest, but it's certainly the easiest and the fastest. And you can have an extra battery along if you need it. You're not going to need it. And the water is clear enough there that even if you need to pre-filter it, you can do that anyway with your bandana or with a t-shirt or whatever. But I don't think you're going to need to do that. I think you're just going to find it's clean enough and it's clear enough you can just use the SteriPen straight up, and that'll give you a pretty fast way to be able to sterilize. Now, there's other ways to sterilize, and you don't have to do this way, but if it were me, this is what I would do. The next to that, we have a headlamp, kind of a cheapo headlamp that I've got just for demonstrations. A big one. I wanted to have kind of something, the largest case scenario for this. And then next to that, I've got a bunch of cordage. Now, I think what you guys are going to probably be bringing for the race is 550 cord or paracord, and that's fine. I use white here for the video just because it stands out better. It's easier to see some of the knots sometimes than using, all I have is OD green 550 cord, and that doesn't work as well. So those are the components. That's what we're trying to get in there. This is the minimum of what you're going to have to carry with you. Now, you're also going to, at one point or another in the race, you're going to have a throwing stick that you're going to be carrying with you probably. You're going to have a survival bow that you'll be carrying with you. You might have a prickly pear, container, water container that you might be carrying with you. So and then you're going to have your fire implements. Your fire implements, I think you're probably going to, you don't have to necessarily carry with you, but we're not sure yet, so don't count on anything. So the point is, the bigger that you could make this handkerchief, if you can get the 27-inch version of the bandana, I think you'd be better off. And certainly in the shirt backpack I'm going to show you, then certainly all those things would fit in there if you had to as well. The bow, of course, you can put across your body. The survival bow, because it'll be strung. You can do with a stick if you have some sort of even you can put that in your waistband if you have that of pants, or even a belt if you want to make a belt. If you want to carry around the knife in on more of a belt that you can get to at any given time, you can do that. So in other words, you can make a belt out of your cordage, and then you can make a leg strap out of the cordage as well, and you can strap it onto your waist that way, and so that way the knife's readily available any time. My opinion is that's not really necessary. You're not going to have to really use your knife on the go, and you wouldn't necessarily anyway. So when you have a task, I mean, in the terms of this race now, of the survival hunter-gatherer race, if you think about it, you're going to get to a station and you're going to have to do a skill. At that point, it's time for you to get out of the race, out of the run, and actually get your mind in the game. And then to do that, I think it would help to unpack your stuff, and then get a drink of water and figure out what you're doing, and then do it, and be focused on it, rather than trying to still be in the race and thinking that you're going to save yourself a few seconds by having a knife that you can pull out right away. So it's up to you. But I would personally, take the time and stop and get my head in the game, rather than just, continuing in that kind of race mode and everything's adrenaline, everything's as fast as you can go. That's what we got. Now, the other thing that we're going to put in there is, of course, the 550 cord. I've got the cordage there, and I'm going to show you how we'll wrap all of that up together. That's what I'm going to do next, is how would I wrap this stuff up to kind of keep it consolidated inside my pack, because these are field expedient pack. You don't want stuff banging around in there, and you don't want stuff coming loose or falling out. So if we can keep it all together, we can do that. And the second thing is, how can we do that and maybe have our cordage easily accessible so that we don't have to unravel it all, but we've got some way to do that. So let me show you how I'll do that next. So what I want to do first is just show you how I would wrap this stuff up. We've got a whole bunch of cordage in here. We could just take the cordage and throw it in there with everything else. But instead of doing that, let's do something a little smarter and a little easier for us to use our cordage once we've got it too, so that every time we need to unwrap this, if all we need is some cordage, we don't have to unravel everything necessarily. We don't have to pull everything apart. And more importantly than that, even, we want to make sure that this stuff isn't bouncing around, loose as much as possible. So let's bind it together. It isn't going to take much. If we need to pull it out, we can even make it so that we can still open this up and pull out what we need to do. We can even leave that unraveled if we want, or unfastened if we want. And our knife, we can do the same thing. We can undo it without having to pull off the cordage. But what we're going to do is first, I'm going to take these first 3 items, just because they fit together well as a bulk, and they come about the same diameter together as that Nalgene bottle. And I'm just going to wrap. It doesn't matter, I'm just going to start this wrap off and just kind of wrap the cordage around it. And I don't need very many wraps. I don't want a lot necessarily, but I want to use up maybe about 1/3 of my cordage on this. Okay, and so now I've got this stuff is just the items are just sticking together pretty well now. They're not going to come apart very easily. Certainly not inside of this bindle or inside of my t-shirt backpack. Okay, so now what I can do is I can go ahead and put these on. I'm going to kind of use it. I'm going to pretend almost like these are two sticks and we're lashing. And that's another video I want to make for you, is how do we do lashings. Now I'm going to go ahead and lash everything together. Okay, so I'm just going to go and start here, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be, you know, again, it doesn't have to be, you know, rocket science, and everything doesn't have to be perfect here. I want to be able to make sure that I've got a balance. If it's pulling off to one side here, because I'm pulling on one side, I'll go ahead and do my next one up here like this. So I kind of do a V, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter as long as I'm consistent with it, and as long as I have a pretty good, by the time I'm done, that I've got a pretty good amount of cordage here that I can actually do what I'm going to call frapping then. Okay, so here I'm going to do one more on this, and then I'm going to go ahead and frapp it. So the way that I frapp it is I just run the cordage around the center of between the bottle and my other stuff. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to tighten down my lashing here. You know, it's kind of a makeshift lashing between these two items or packages of components. And then what I'm also doing is I'm giving myself sort of a roll to be able to unroll my cordage and use it if I need to be able to, for instance, make a bowstring or something like that, or make a string for my, you know, cut off a piece of the string for my bow drill. So as I'm frapping, notice how it tightens down the two portions of that lashing. That's what a frapping is. Your lashing is all really about your frapping when you lash two sticks together. And again, I'm going to do a travois video for you guys, and then I do that, we're going to do some more lashing. So I'm just going to do it like this. So now I've got both a tightened lashing together, so these things are sticking together a little better, and I've got a way that I can just go ahead and start using my string. Now this is by no means the same amount of 550 cord you're going to have. This is probably only about 20 feet at most. I think you're going to have more like 50 feet, maybe even 100 feet. I don't think you're going to need 100 feet. 50 feet should be more than adequate. But so you'll probably have a lot more here to be able to unravel. But I tried to use about a third to a half of it on here, and the rest of it here so that I can unravel it and use it if I need to pull everything out. I can still take a drink out of my water. I can still pull my knife out. I've got my knife clipped in there on the sheath there, but I can easily pull this knife out if I need to. I can still pull this out if I need to, my sterry pin out if I need to separately, and pop it back in there. And you can experiment with doing that, because you're going to have different equipment than what I've got here, of course, a little bit. I mean, different, you know, types of equipment. It's going to be the same items, but different brands and different sizes and different shapes and that kind of thing. So experiment with how that works for you. Get it down and then use that. Whatever you do, practice it. Find whatever's going to work best and practice that. You don't even have to do this, and you could leave these things sitting free in here, but I just think that if you do this, it's going to minimize the amount that you're going to have to worry about this stuff bouncing around, possibly coming loose. You know, you don't want that water bottle coming loose. You don't want anything possibly trying to work its way out of your makeshift field expedient pack. Alright, so now that we've got everything in here, you know, I mean, fastened together for ourselves, let's do a couple of different actual backpacks. That's really the purpose of this video. So one we can do is called the Bindle. And this is where you've probably all seen this, I'm sure. And remember this is an old hobo trick. You do this and then you put it on the back of a stick and carry it, you know, carry the stick over your shoulder. Same concept. And really all you're doing is you're just tying opposite sides together. And so we're going to do a modified version of that. So let me just show you what that would look like if we just did it with nothing but this bandana. And as you can see, you know, we're just stretching the limits of the size of this bandana, even with what I've got in here. So we've got this and this. So we've got two different knots, overhand knots that we tied in this. Now what we end up with, notice, is we end up with four ends, but they can be used, that we can pull on all four of these ends together as though they're two separate strings, or two separate anchor points, and that's what they're going to be. They're two separate anchor points that we can use for a backpack. So if I were to take a string and tie it onto this and tie it onto this, I could literally take that string and I could put that over my shoulders, and I'll show you how I would do that. Okay. However, here's the problem. If I do it that way and I tie these together, I'm going to have a real hard time untying it, and I want to be able to get this on and off. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to tie the strings on first, and then I'm going to do the same knot. Okay. So to do that, I need to use, you know, some of my rope for that, and I can just tie those on first. Now, what I want to do is I want to take about 6 feet, because of the way we're going to tie the backpack, I need about 6 feet of pre-cut cord. So I could take that from here, and I already did. So I measured 6 feet real easily, or it doesn't have to be necessarily 6 feet. What it should be is it should be your arm span. So from fingertip to fingertip approximately, or even palm to palm. If you stretch this out, if I stretch this cord out from palm to palm, then this is going to be about 6 feet. Because from fingertip to fingertip, that's usually about the same as what your height is. So if you're 5 feet tall, then your arm reach from fingertip to fingertip will probably be approximately 5 feet, and that's fine, because that's probably going to be enough with your frame, your size frame, unless you're really overweight, and nobody who's running this race is overweight. I know you all got a total combined body fat of about 10%, I think. That's all of you put together. So you're not going to have any problem with that at all if you just go fingertip to fingertip. So then what I want to do is I want to tie this one of these onto each of my corners of this bindle, right? Of this bandana. Now, I showed you this knot. If you came down for the weekend, you can use a number of different knots to do this. You could just tie the two together in an overhand knot like so, if you wanted to. I don't really like doing that because I don't want to have a knot to have to sit there and navigate through another knot. I want it to be as smooth as possible. So I'm going to use the one I showed you because I like it. It's a good knot, and it works very well for tying two pieces of cordage or of any sort together, generally, as long as they're not massively different in diameter. So what that is that's called the double sheet bend. And so the double sheet bend, if you remember, I made a bite out of one of my cords. I'm going to do that out of this one. I'm going to just treat this as though it's a piece of rope. I'm going to make a bite out of that, and a bite is just basically, that's a bite. B-I-G-H-T, if you look it up, B-I-G-H-T is a bite. That's where the rope just folds back on itself. Okay, and then I'm going to take this piece of rope and I'm going to put it up through the center of that bite, okay, like so, okay, and then what I do is to just make it a little easier, I stick my finger out so that I have a place, I need a place to be able to loop this end back in through, and so if I stick my finger out it makes it easier. So I took my rope and I came up through my bite, wrapped it around my finger, and then came around on the inside of that. And I hope this video is picking this up okay. It's hard to do just by yourself to do knots on a video, but hopefully I'll go through and edit it and check it out. So this comes down and around and then back in through there. That's a single sheet bend. That's a single sheet bend, and we're going to do a double. So we take this and we can wrap it around a second time, and that makes it a double sheet bend. Okay, and then we just dress the whole knot up carefully. Okay, and we should end up something looking like just like that as we dress it up and tighten it up. Okay. Now I probably used a little more on the end of that than I need to, but with 6 feet I've got a little extra to spare, so I'm okay. Alright, so I'm going to do that on each one of these corners, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, there's my double sheet bend. Do one on this corner, and on this corner, and then we can redo our tie. Alright, I just took a look at what I did here, and I don't know if it's as clear as I would like it to be, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to tie one more on video, and then I'll tie the other two off video, just to save us a little bit of time. So again, we were right here with the bite. I'm making a bite. Again, if you didn't understand what I meant by bite, I'll show it a little easier on the white. This is a bite, if I show it with a white cordage. I'll do the same thing with this, make a bite, okay? And then I'll try not to cover up the knot with my hands this time like I did on the last one, I think. So I've got it here. There's my bite. I'm just going to kind of have to hold it in place there while I take my working end and run it up through the center of that bite. Now remember, what I want to do then is I want to have my finger over there so that I have a spot to be able to loop my end, my working end underneath. So it comes around on the inside again towards me, comes around on the inside and goes underneath. That's a single, okay, and then here's a double. Come around one more time here. And then all that's left to do, once I've done that double, is to just kind of dress the knot up. And I want to try to make sure I don't have a whole bunch sticking out on the end. So I'm going to dress it up from the working end side here a little bit. And then when I'm done, it should look like that. Okay, so there's my bite, and there's my double sheet bend. Now I'm going to do the other two off camera. Alright, I'm back, and I just went ahead and tied those other two knots, the double sheet bends off camera to save us a little bit of time in the video, the actual video time. And so now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before, which is just tie an overhand knot between these corners of my bindle, but this time I'm going to use my whole string so that when I untie it and I tie it, I've got that string, and it's really easy to do. Okay, so as an example here, I'm going to just tie this around here, like so, and I just use the string as just an extension of the corner, right? That's all that is, just an extension of that corner. So now I've got that tied off, and I've got the 2 strings coming off either end there. I'll do the same thing on this side now. Same thing I did before. Just tying an overhand knot, and that means just the very first knot you tie when you tie your shoes, that's all an overhand knot is, and that's all we need to do here. And so I might have to kind of help this along just a little bit because I want it to be nice and snug. I want everything, I don't want there to be any spaces left open when I'm done in my bindle. I want to try to have everything covered up on this inside as much as possible. Okay. And so now, if you remember what I did before, where I took the 2 ends on either side that were going the same direction, I took the 2 ends, the 2 corners that were together basically, and I pulled on one and I pulled on the other, and I said, you know, if I tied strings to these, I'd have a backpack, and that's what I've got here. If I pull on these, now I've got a backpack. Okay, so the only thing left to do is just to make sure that there's plenty of, all the slack's taken up there individually, and then I'm ready to tie a backpack. So I'm going to show you that next. Alright, so we are back with the final product, which is our bindle, which has basically 2 cords on each side, 2 attachment points on each side, and this will hold together just fine. We're going to put this on our back. Now, we can turn this into a sling if we wanted to. I'm not a big fan of slings when you, like I said earlier, I think when you're moving around and you're jumping and you're moving and you're having to and you're going your whole hauling stuff, especially through water. You just don't want that thing down low. You want everything up high on your back if you can help it. My opinion, you know, do what you want, but you can certainly experiment with just doing this as a sling over one side. I mean, you can. That's self-explanatory. You'll figure that out in no time at all if you want to do it that way. But let me just show you the backpack version. The backpack is basically taking this. This is going to be against my back now, and I can just flip it over the top. But I'm going to go ahead and put it over here so you can see what I'm talking about. So that it's facing me. So I'm going to put it over the top of me like this, and I really want it up literally almost between my shoulder blades here. Okay, so it's between my shoulder blades, and then notice I've got 2 shoulder straps here basically, and they're going to come down on the front side of my shoulder. Okay, on the front side of underneath each armpit here, like so, and then they're going to come around behind the back of me and just cross over like so. Okay, and then I'm going to tie this, and I can tie this all the way down at my belly. I think that the camera isn't going to catch that, and so let me just tie it around my massive chest if I can possibly do that. So what I need to do to tie this is just going to be a square knot. A square knot is right over left, left over right. Okay, if you mess up and it's a granny knot, it's not the end of the world. It'll be okay. But the square knot, if a square knot is just like tying your shoes, the very first tie, an overhand knot, just like we did when we tied this bindle together. So right over left, that was actually, as I'm doing this here, this is my left here, and this is my right, so it's my left over right to begin with. Okay, and the next one will be right over left, so that'll be my right over my left. Okay, and just do the opposite of what I did before, and I don't usually tie my square knot that way, but that's how you do it if you've never tied a square knot before. I usually just tie them. I don't know. That's how I just tie them anymore. So I was kind of going through the motions there, and usually what I do is this, which is actually kind of like right under left, left under right. I guess that's what I just did there, but same idea. So when I end up with a square knot, same thing. Okay, so here I am with the square knot tied around my chest, sort of like a chest strap. Everything's up high. I can jump around with this thing. I can run. I've jumped rope. Like I said, I ran about 5 miles with it just to see. No problems at all. It did not come loose. Nothing broke open. Nothing tried to work its way out. So I think you're going to be absolutely golden with this. Both arms are free for climbing, for doing all the stuff you need to do, even shooting a bow, throwing a stick. You can do all of that with this on just like this. The worst case scenario is maybe if you tie a little bit tight, it might start to shut off your circulation a little bit. I mean, you'll just feel it'll kind of wear in here. But it's, you're talking about a total of maybe 3 pounds, 4 pounds. Well, a liter is what, 2 pounds maybe, plus a few pounds for weight. So maybe 5 pounds, 6 pounds. It's not going to be a problem, I'm sure, of any of that. So I'm going to go. That's it for the Bindle backpack. Let's go ahead and go over now to the t-shirt backpack. Alright, so for the t-shirt backpack, the first thing we need, obviously, let me get the Bindle backpack out of the way here. The first thing we need is a t-shirt. Imagine that. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to turn this part of the t-shirt into our backpack. This is going to be one shoulder, and this is going to be the other shoulder as our shoulder straps, more or less. It's going to be the anchor points for it. And this will be the t-shirt. This will be the body of the backpack. As you can probably already figure out what we're going to do here. We're going to just tie something around the base here so that we can use it, so that we can put stuff in there, and then we're going to tie off this when we're done. So really it's just a matter of seeing a few knots and seeing how I do this. So let me go ahead and show you the bottom part first. What I need for that is, again, about a 6 foot, for me, about a 6 foot piece of rope. So I think I have a little bit shorter one than that, and that should still work. I think it's about, I don't know, I cut this before I measured all the other ones off, so it's probably under 6 feet, but a little under, maybe 5.5, 5 feet. That's still going to probably work for me. It might be a little bit tight, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to find the center of my cordage here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it. When I'm done, I want that center, I want to have 2 equal ends coming off of that. Now, to tie this, there's a bunch of different knots we could use. I'm just going to use, we could use a square knot again, or even better, because we've got rope up against the friction of the t-shirt here, of the cotton in this case, but whatever it's going to be, I'm going to go ahead and tie a surgeon's knot, because that gives us a little more friction to begin with. So a surgeon's knot is the same thing as if I were tying my shoe, except one more. So there's the overhand knot, and then we just do one more, and that turns it into a surgeon's knot. Okay, that's the base. And the reason they call it a surgeon's knot is when you're doing suture, you want to have as much friction. You could use this even when you're tying Christmas presents or whatever, where you're using that, you don't want to have somebody hold their finger there while you tie the bow. You know, this whole idea is it's got more friction, so it holds its tightness on itself. And here I just want to have more friction between this and the cloth, just, you know, for the heck of it. Let's just say, just to keep things from coming out completely, and it won't. You know, like I said, I ran with this, I jumped with this, it was fine. So it was one direction, remember, right over left, left over right. So for my surgeon's knot, here's my other side. So it's just like a square knot, except it has an extra overhand on that part there, on your first part of that knot, on the first half of it. Okay, so I'm going to tie my square knot. I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight, and hopefully I didn't mess up, and I didn't too bad. One's a little longer than the other, but that's okay. Now I'm going to take each one of these, and I'm just going to tie them, and these are going to become basically my shoulder straps. You can probably see exactly what's going on here. So we want this to not be too long. Again, we want this to be fairly high on the back, but we want to be able to get it on and off, because it's a little different than our other one. You see, on our Bindle backpack, we tie it on, so we can kind of customize however we want to tighten it down. This one, we're not going to be able to customize it, so that's the downside of it. The upside of it is we can probably hold more in this. Okay, so to do this, we can do a couple different, we can just tie another square knot, or what I like to do is just a clove hitch here, and I think I showed you guys a clove hitch that were at the training weekend, and a clove hitch would just be using this as though it were the stick for a clove hitch. I run the cordage up it and make an X. Is an easy way to remember it. Make an X, and then come around, and then I put the working end underneath that X, fully underneath that X, and pull the whole thing tight. Like so. And then if I want to tie it off even a little bit more, I can take this and I can do a half hitch onto the end of that clove hitch, and that's going to work just fine. So there's where my arm's going to go through, and that's enough room to get it on and also to be able to get it off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tie the other one off camera, and then I will talk about tying the top, and we'll put some stuff in there and check that out. Alright, so I got both arms tied now. I've got the clove hitch with a half hitch on the end of it here, and a clove hitch with a half hitch on the end of it here, and voila, we have what resembles sort of a field expedient backpack here. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm going to take, I went and grabbed the other stuff out of my Bindle backpack, and now I'm going to put it into here, put it into my backpack, and that just goes straight in through the neck hole of my t-shirt, like so. And as you can see, there's actually quite a bit more room in this version of a backpack than there was in the other. So this would be something if you had to make a backpack to even carry, I don't know, a bedroll. I mean, normally when you pack a bedroll, you put everything in your bedroll, and that's your pack too. But if you had to have more stuff that had more bulk in it, you could certainly do that very easily here. And of course, it stretches more than the bandana does too. So you may or may not want to do this. This is again something you just need to try out. So now all that's left to do is just to tie off the top. And to tie off the top, we can use what's called a bag knot. You can do anything you want. I've got a piece of cordage that's a little longer than I need to be. I just pulled one off that was already one of my 6-foot pieces. You probably only need about 2 feet to do this, so this is going to be a little unhandy because of that. Well, I like to use a bag knot to tie the top of a bag. For that reason, it works really well, and that's why it's called a bag knot. And so let me show you that one. Now if I didn't know anything about bag knots and I just wanted to tie a couple of overhand knots in here and do that, I could probably get away with that just fine, honestly. There's probably not going to be a lot of pressure coming up against that, and even something that simple would work. if you want to do the bag knot, let me show you what that is, because that holds really well around cloth, around like a cloth bag like this. And so for that, what we have is, here's the way to tie a bag knot. I mean, an easy way to remember. It's a very simple knot, but it's, let me just show you, once you learn it, you'll see how simple it is, but let me show you a good way to learn it. And that is, we've got our, we go ahead and cross our working end, or we'll call this, we've got really two working ends here. I'm going to go ahead and cross this across here so you can see the full length of it. And then what I'm going to do is take my working end here, and I'm going to run it up and around the other direction. So just holding on to this, I'm going to run this around and up the other direction twice. Okay, like so. So what I did was, do this again real quick for you. Here's what I'm trying to tie off. I've got my, we'll just call this our standing end. Okay, I'm going to take my working end, which is much longer than it should be really, again, working end, and I'm going to cross it, I'm going to cross it over, you can think of it that way, cross it over twice. Like so. Okay, and then you're just going to run it down through here, through this little end that we had with our original standing end here, like so. We just cross it down over this. Okay, it's just kind of a glorified overhand knot, really, is what it is, but it's really good for friction. And so again, I would probably cut this off right about here. This as long as it needs to be. Real easy to do and undo, so that's why they call it a bag knot. That's probably an old sailor's knot, you know, for packing up your, you know, holding the top of your bag. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put this on. I got to move the camera around a little bit, and I'll show you how this would go on and how it fits. All right, so hopefully you get enough in the camera here. I don't have to reshoot this. Now we've got our, if you can just kind of ignore this extra from the top of our bag knot, I'm just going to loop this around here so it's out of the way. Again, it's way too long, so let me just do this, kind of get it out of our way here. What we've got here now is our backpack, and we've got two arms. So as you can see, unlike the Bindle backpack with the bandana, the backpack here that we've made out of a t-shirt, we've got it to take on and off kind of like this, which is a little bit more of an issue, you know, in terms of getting it on and off fast. Although the other one you have to tie each time, so on the other hand, the other one you get a custom fit each time. So it's up to you to decide which you like, but I'm going to go ahead and just put this on as though I were getting ready to go run a race with it. And you'll notice it's a little tight. I want it tight because I don't want it flopping around too much. And so here we have it sitting in the back, okay, and so you notice that is pretty tight. So that's perfect. It actually is perfect. This is exactly what I want. So I can run around with this just fine. Again, I did the same thing. I jumped rope with this. I ran about 5 miles with this. You know, neighborhood running. I'm not really doing anything real too extreme or anything like that, like this race will be. But I did get an idea for how it was feeling. It was fine. You know, it's absolutely fine. Bouncing around, it was no problem at all. No problem, of course, in losing anything or anything like that. So here's what we got. Pretty good fit, tight fit. You know, I can't adjust it. That's the only downside. But if I've got my strings measured and I figured it out ahead of time, that's not an issue anyway. All right, so that's our 2 Field Expedient backpacks. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at sam@thehumanpath.com. Thanks.